Did you know that there is a map on your face? Yes, there is, Christine Swann. What the heck in the world is face mapping anyway?
Well, it has to do with the features of the face, and if you slow down and look really carefully, there are certain things that set one person apart from another. And if you slow down and really can nail those little tiny markers of the head, you'll be that much closer to getting a good likeness of the portrait that you're creating.
Okay, so you're gonna show us how to pinpoint the map points on a face to make sure that when we're creating a drawing of a face or painting of a face, that we get proper likeness. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, there's subtle nuances that set one person apart from another. So if you slow down and are really careful about these things, it'll help a lot.
And what happens if I get it wrong?
Then you're drawing another person, or it'll always seem just a little bit off. So yeah. It's good to find these points and really look for them.
Well, I'm really looking for this because sometimes, I'll draw a portrait or I'll paint a portrait and, something's off and I can't figure out how to get the likeness. And this is something I'm sure everybody needs. So let's officially get this show started.
Let's go.
Okay, so you want to go ahead and get your drawing set up?
Yep, let me turn this camera here and I will show you a drawing that I've already got set up here.
Okay.
So this is my drawing, just basic pencil drawing. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go through certain markers, certain features of the head. And by slowing down and kind of looking at certain things to look for, it'll really, really help you, really dial in that likeness. And sometimes it's just things we kind of take for granted and we draw them really, really quick. But if we slow down and really look, it will really, really help.
It'll really, really help.
Really, really help.
All right. Well, we're just going to get the show opening here and then we'll be right back.
It's Art School Live with Eric Rose.
Guest is Christine Swann, and we're going to learn about painting or drawing the marks, the mapping of the face so that you can make sure you get the likeness correct. Christine, take it away.
Absolutely. Great. Happy to be here. Thanks again for having me back. So this is basically just a rather simple pencil drawing. And what I want to do is kind of go through with a red marker and highlight some of the things that are really making this model look like this model. So the first one that I wanted to talk about is the eyebrows. And when you were drawing or painting eyebrows, it's kind of easy to think of them as just curved, right? Like as a curve. But what you really want to look for is actually a triangular shape. So right here where her eyebrow is, there's like this almost little peak, and it kind of is sometimes a little really subtle on people where you really want to find that little peak area right there. And if you can get the angle of this triangle correct, what's happening literally is on where that peak is on the eyebrow is where the head starts to really turn. So this part of the eyebrow right here is the front part of the plane. And right over here it starts where the face starts turning sideways. And as soon as the eyebrow ends, that's actually the side of the face. Like this whole thing is really the side of her face. So instead of, just thinking, oh, I'm just going to put this eyebrow in here and keep it curved, look for that little peak right in through here and try and find that triangle shape. And some people have it, pretty much even. Some have it long and then it's just a little peak right there. Some have, where it's almost curved and then a little tiny peak. But you want to look for that little top point right there on an eyebrow. And that will help a lot with really getting a likeness.
Okay.
Yeah. So then the next thing that you really want to look for is, I call it the lash to crease relationship. And so basically we think of eyes, if there's a lash line right in through here, there's a crease that happens right above it. And it's very specific to people. So sometimes this is what really sets one person apart from another. And sometimes that crease follows the lash line. So they're very even, like this. Sometimes here, if this is the lash line again, the crease comes up and gets wider in through here and then comes back down again. You'll see this a lot with older folks or more hooded, deep set eyes. So when you're painting eyes, really look for the relationship between right here where the lashes come out from, right here, that dark spot, and then the shape above it. And you can kind of see on here on the drawing that it's not a perfect curve. With her, it almost kind of does up, goes over a little bit more rectangular, and then comes down, and it gets a little fatter right in through here than on this side. And if you look in the reference and you see the other eye, you'll see it's slightly different. It's actually a little wider on this side than it is on the other eye. And that's very typical. A lot of people have almost asymmetrical things happening with the crease to lash line between both eyes. So you want to kind of slow down and really look and see what is the relationship between the lash line and this shape right above it. Because if you can get that, then that's really one good indicator of what sets one person apart from another. So you really want to watch that.
All right, that's helpful.
Yeah. So then building in and around the eye, there's this shape that you kind of want to look for. I call it the spectacle shape or the six-sided shape. And this kind of builds off of the eyebrow. So it's literally six-sided or six lines that you can put together around the eye that kind of help build the eye, again, to make sure that it's very specific to her. And so the first two lines are, again, right here on the eyebrow. And then it comes down. You can even see on the reference, it starts getting dark right here where the planes change. And then when we're doing a portrait, sometimes it's really difficult. We always see this dark line that happens underneath here. Even toddlers have that. Basically what's happening, the skin is coming up and over and it's kind of skipping over the edge of the orbital bone right there. And then it does it again coming back this way. And then of course right here is where that plane changes again. And you can see it on the photo reference. It's really subtle. It's kind of dark in here and then it gets light right in here. But if you look for this six-sided shape, this will kind of help you lock in what's happening structurally around the eye. So not just the eye itself, but what's happening around it. So slow down and again, kind of look for this area, this line, and how it kind of connects up and around the eyebrow. And that will help you a lot too. Especially
Okay, so do you have a process that you follow? Do you, for instance, look when you're drawing something, do you start with a certain shape?
Yeah, I'll typically for me, I will locate the eyebrows and then I'll start coming down and find this six-sided shape, because once I have this kind of shape locked in, it's easier to locate the eye in there. So sometimes it's just really hard to just draw the eye in there. It's almost like things get floating because you don't have anything to lock it against. Whereas if I find where this crease is and like this little shadow area that's over here, now all of a sudden I have a much smaller area to locate that eye inside of there. So it tends to be really, really helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So the other thing we want to look for is with regard to the eye is what's called a compound curve. So when we think of eyes, we think in terms of, like it's almost like almond shaped, like there's a curve on the top and there's a curve on the bottom. But a compound curve, basically a regular curve, is this, where if you pretend that this is a car and you're looking down on the car and we're driving along on a road and we're turning to the right, and all of a sudden it kicks to the left. This is what's known as a compound curve. And this really helps a lot when you're depicting the eyes, because the eyes are actually around, like it goes around in space. And so when you see a little kick like this, it helps it be a little bit more humanistic. So right down here, if this is the nose area, right here is where that little muscle is in the corner of the eye. You'll see the lash line come up and around, and then it'll do this little kick. Sometimes it's just the eyelashes, or it's the eyelid itself will do that little kick backwards. And the interesting thing is that it'll do it the other direction, the other way. So when we do the lower lid, it'll come this way and that car's driving. And then all of a sudden it'll kick down a little bit right in through here. So we've got these little kicks of this little compound curve where it's changing direction right here at the bottom where the musculature is, right here in the corner of the eye. And then you have it right up and through here. And so it'll make the eye seem much more realistic and believable than just putting it in like this with an almond shape without thinking about those little kickbacks right in through there.
I think that's a common problem. People want to make eyes the shape of almonds.
Yeah, exactly. And if you just kick it just a little bit and just slow down and look and see what is that lid doing? How's it change direction just a little bit right in through there? It'll definitely help it be more believable. And if you slow down and really look at it, it'll make sure that it's definitely the person that you're drawing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. So the next one, we're going to move on to the nose here. And there's obviously a lot of things you can think about with the nose, and I'm sure other people talk about it structurally and everything. I wanted to just point out that one of the most important things is how the nose sits right along the bottom. If you were to draw a line right across, when we're babies tend to have this root of the nose kind of higher than the flanges. So the flanges will kind of be out and down lower if I drew a line right here. So the flanges are a little lower than the midpoint of the root of the nose. As we get older, what happens is we kind of grow into our noses. And what happens is the flanges tend to be higher than the midpoint of the root point of the nose. Now, this is not true on everyone. There's always, exceptions to the rule and different ethnicities and everything like that. But for the most part, you just want to look at where does the flange sit with regard to the root of the nose. And if you look at this model, she's actually very even. So right where the flanges are, line right up with the root of the nose, straight across. So if I had the nose or little nostrils on the side a little too high or a little too low, that's also going to kind of kick her not really looking like her. This is very distinctive to her. So we want to make sure that that's all lined up.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Then we're going to move on to the mouth. So the mouth is actually, it's funny. I have a lot of friends that are illustrators or caricaturists that do a lot of exaggerations in the face. And the interesting thing with them is, you know, if they're painting someone like Angelina Jolie or something, and they exaggerate how big the lips are and everything, but somehow it still looks like her. It always is amazing to me. And the thing that they're looking for and that they're holding tight is this crease in between the two lips. So I could literally not paint the rest of her lips, but if I got that crease correct with the seam, the way the two lips come together, it's very, very distinctive from one person to another. So if you watch very carefully, you'll be able to, you know, make it look like them, even if you didn't paint the rest of the lips. And it's interesting. So with the lips too, the bottom lip has these two muscles on the bottom. And then the top lip has this muscle on the top. And what happens is when they come together, they create this little tiny divot between the two. And so it's very distinctive. And again, it's one of those things where you kind of just get tempted to just run a line through there. Oh, that's just the seam between the lips. But it's really important how the two of them come together. And with this model, it's very, very subtle. Hers is actually pretty straight across right in through here. But with a lot of people, they do have this very, very kicked, very specific divot. And then where the edge of the or the corners of the mouth are in relationship to this, how high they are, how low they are, is also a very good indicator of, you know, one person from another. So you really want to watch that crease in between. What does that line look like? And where do the corners of the lips, where are they located in regard to that middle part of the mouth right there?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Very helpful. Then the other thing I want to just talk about is right in through like the top of the lip too. We could talk about that. There's typically a divot that happens right into here. There's two like peaks. People kind of think of terms of the like Cupid's bow of the mouth or whatever. Again, on this model, it's very shallow right in through here. But some people have it much more of a curve in there. So just kind of watch how much of a divot is right here underneath this philtrum. That's that little divot that happens underneath the nose. If you watch really carefully how straight across it is or how curved it is, that will also help you as well. And then we're going to move down here to the chin, which is kind of a funny area when you're doing a portrait or a painting. It's almost as though it's kind of just this ending point on the face. But if you can start thinking in terms of the chin as being a golf ball. So it's really this interesting, almost this golf ball shape that's just set here right on the edge of the face. And anything you can do to kind of render it, add some shadow to it. You can see that little crease that's happening right here underneath the lower lip. Anything you can do to kind of emphasize that and really find the curvature right here on the bottom of the chin, again, is very distinctive thing from one person to another. And some people have it almost kind of squared off on the bottom of the chin. Some are very pointy. So that's another thing to really watch for and make sure it feels really round in through there. A lot of men too will have it kind of wider and then it'll come out. So this is, you know, the bone right here is a lot more angular. And some people have it very, very pointy. A lot of little toddlers and little kids will have it kind of on the pointy side. So again, just slow down and really look at that curve and say, what is that feature telling me? And if I can get it accurate, then I can kind of dial it in and really get it to look like them.
Wow.
Yeah, hopefully that'll help.
That's it.
And that's it.
Oh, well, we've got 45 minutes to fill.
So, well, we can keep talking about some more things. So the forehead here. So this is another interesting thing that's really interesting from one person to another. And this is a little bit more elaborate. It's called the thirds of the head. And so everyone has these thirds of their head. So if you think in terms of where the forehead turns up into the hairline right in through here, this would give us the beginning of our first third. So if I'm looking at the top of the eyebrows, we're kind of pretending that I'm just kind of drawing right through the brow bone, right in through there. This will be the first third of the head. Then from there, we're going to go down again, and I pretty much already have my line in through here, right here at the root of the nose. This will be my second third of the head. And you can already see in this model, look at how big this area is versus this one. And so this is another way to be very carefully, set one person apart from another, because here's the third one right here. So this is the last third of the head right in through here. So you can see that this one's smaller, this one's a little bigger, and this one's almost more medium size. A lot of people have those thirds even, where it's a third, a third, a third is all very.
Okay, so what you're saying is they're not always equal thirds.
Not always equal thirds. And that's why sometimes we get into trouble when we start thinking about the measurements of the head, or that the eyes are in the middle, whatever. It's this part right here, these thirds, that will really help you, again, set one person apart from another. And when you kind of find these thirds, it's funny, even if you don't really draw a mouth or eyes, and you just start getting those thirds in there and just the general shape of the head, it's amazing. It'll actually start looking like them without doing a whole lot of work yet, because this is such a distinctive thing between people. And so I tell people all the time, when you're watching a movie or something and you have two people talking to each other, take a good look at the difference between the thirds of the head between one person and the person next to them. And you're going to start seeing a difference. And what that does is it really starts helping you train your brain on different things to kind of dial in, how one person is different from another person.
I think that's really important, because what I've been doing wrong, and I've just learned today, is I've just always assumed that they were always equal thirds. So I take the top of the forehead to the eyebrows, to the bottom of the nose, to the chin, but I would take a circle and I would draw it in thirds, and then I would place it in there. So if somebody's got a longer nose, that's not going to work.
Right, exactly. And I felt like for the longest time, that's what I struggled with. And I would, do the oval of the head and trying to find the features and everything. And what I found is everything was just kind of floating, and I had no way to really kind of lock it in to start looking like them early on. And so once I started learning about this thirds of the head and applying that, it really helped a lot, because now all of a sudden I know where my eyebrows are and I know where the bottom of the nose is. So this is like a really nice locked in features that we know this is here and this is here. And now what's happening all in between? And it gives me a smaller distance to kind of work out where everything else is. And especially here with the chin and the mouth, as long as I know what this proportion is to this one, like how much smaller is this one to this one, then I can start saying, okay, well, where's the mouth now in here, not just in the whole entire head. It's a way to kind of cut it down and just get more precise with it. And it can be really, really helpful.
Here's a question from Susan Hunter-Geese. Are these changes in the muscular part of the face or the skull?
Most of this is all just structure. So for example, like the crease and to the lash line is structurally, it's literally how that eyelid is turning back in space. So it's structurally, so it's musculature, and it's some of the bone work in there too. But it's just such a foundation of what sets one person apart from another. Some of it, like if we're talking about cheeks, like how full a cheek is or how round the end of the nose is, a lot of that is cartilage and musculature up and through there. But, the thirds of the head, and even just how the eyebrow sits on the brow bone, all of that is just structurally, different from one person to another. We think, oh, we're all kind of the same, but we're really not. There's so many structurally just big differences between one person and another. I often quote like Jay Leno. We think of Jay Leno, and whenever they do a caricature of him or anything, he always has such a big jaw, right? And so his thirds of the head down here is much, much bigger than his forehead. And so it's what sets him apart from someone else. And so you kind of have to go after that to say, hey, well, what makes this person unique, and what are their individual markers that make them different from another person? And
Susan in the comments says you're blowing our minds. Okay, we have questions. So I'm going to throw some of the questions out. One of them is the eye centered in the orbit, or is it to one side?
It can be either way, because some people have more offset eyes, or a little bit more distance between the two. Some are a little more close set. And so again, it's a structural thing, because this whole ridge of the nose comes forward, and so it'll cast a shadow. So you can see it really in a cast depending on the light, and you'll see this almost dark shape that'll come straight down and then across. And so again, it just depends on who you're looking at. And again, a lot of the ethnicity of certain people, their eyes will be a little further apart or a little bit closer together. Children too will kind of skew this whole thing too, because little toddlers, their features are all kind of like squished together, and they have a lot of big mass on the top of their head. So young children, the thirds of their head, typically the whole top of their forehead and everything is much bigger than the rest of their features because everything's kind of squashed down in through here until they kind of grow into more adult features. So yeah.
Right.
So
Their eyes never change, right? The eyes are full size from the
yeah,
beginning.
yeah,
That's why it looks like kids have such big eyes. So
yeah.
what you're saying is if you were to draw that map around the orbit of the eye, and then you kind of measure the distance from the corner to the corner, the top to the bottom, et cetera, you're going to be able to figure that out. Okay, so another question relates to the nose, and another one relates to the ears.
Yeah.
So the question about the nose is, how do you sometimes the ball of that nose is higher or lower. I guess you treat it the same way. You try to figure out where the ball is, how
Right.
wide it is, how narrow it is.
Right, exactly. And it's really interesting. My one daughter is very difficult to paint. She has a very round end on the end of her nose. We're going to make this, my little model here, look like a clown a little bit. And she's very round right in through there. So if you can really watch how round something is, and even when you're painting or drawing, if you can kind of get your mark making to kind of set in a round way as you're drawing something, that'll really help that. And again, some people are much larger, some are a little smaller. It just depends on, again, the features of a certain person. But if you can kind of think of it as that whole thing is really a ball, and just kind of really going after how big and how small that is in that space. And again, making sure that everything lines up right through here with the flanges, that will help a lot.
Okay. Now, what about the creating the dimensionality of the nose? Oftentimes there's a shadow under the nose. Of course, it's going to depend
Right.
on the light.
Right.
So do you have any tips on looking at that?
Yeah, again, it's always going to depend on the lighting. I saw you had William Schneider on here a little bit ago, and he was talking about a lot of those, shadow shapes that happen underneath the nose, or different places on the face. And yeah, it's going to depend on the lighting. In this model, this particular shot that I'm using right here, that it's more of an uplighting. It's coming up from this side. So you don't really get that cast shadow underneath the nose. In this case, I'm getting it over here, which I didn't really emphasize too much in the drawing. So it just depends, like how the lighting is. It's best if it is from the top and coming down, and it casts this beautiful shadow that happens under the nose, because the nose comes forward so much from the face. And so, it really gives you that sense of depth. But I feel like always look for that round shape, and then where they line up on the bottom, and that'll help no matter what the lighting situation is.
So what about a situation where we're not getting a straight on? Is it pretty much the same concept, like if you're doing a profile or something?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the head could be tipped up or down, so that will change things. But even if you could just slow down and, like, say if she was looking to the side and looking up, just find out where that root of the nose connects versus where the flange is. So if she's looking up, obviously now the flange is going to be a little bit lower than the root of the nose. And it's just good to kind of go after that relationship. So even if she's tipped or moved or looking to the side, still kind of say, well, where's the root of the nose? Where's the flange, and where are they in relationship to each other? And that'll go a long way to helping you out.
Okay. Now, a lot of times people will say that the corners of the eyes line up with the flange of the nose. Is that pretty much always true, or is it not always true?
When you're looking straight on at somebody, it's generally true, but not always. Again, different ethnicities, different people, and again, children will kind of kick that one way or another. So, a lot of people say, well, just draw a line straight down and you'll find the end of the nose. That's not always the case. I've been doing portrait work for over 30 years, and I can tell you there's always people that break the rules. The same thing happens where they talk about the corners of the mouth are supposed to line up right with the pupil. Well, if the person is smiling a little bit more, if they're looking to the side, those measurements don't really count anymore. So you kind of have to just, run some lines down, run some lines across, and keep asking yourself, what am I really seeing? Is a certain area to the left or right of where it's ending, or at the end of the nose? Is it, left or right, or things going up and down on that line? And just, straight lines will always be your friend. If you can put a horizontal line in and then ask yourself what's happening against a horizontal line, that always really helps.
Okay. So I'd be curious, and maybe you'll demonstrate for us a little bit how you would map that out when you're drawing one. But I have other questions from here. Here's Neil asks, any creases between eyebrows?
Creases between the eyebrows, like right in here?
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, well, there's an area right in through here where the bridge of the nose stops, and it goes up into the forehead. And this little area right in here, it does this little inverted kind of pentagon shape right in through. I think that's the right say, or four-sided shape right in here. It's called the glabella. And so typically when you have lighting from up top, this gets a little shadowy because what's happening is the brow bone comes forward, then it kicks back a little bit and it takes on this darker shape. And then the bridge of the nose starts, typically somewhere around the corners of the eye, sometimes higher, sometimes a little lower. And then what happens is you get this little bridge that comes more straight out at you. And people tend to miss this little glabella area. You want that little, you know, that little dark area happening in right here, because the forehead doesn't just run into the bridge of the nose. It's not on the same plane. And there's actually this little divot that happens in through here. Now on my photo reference that you guys are looking at right now, it's harder to see that because the lighting is coming from the side and it's coming up. So it's kind of flattened out this whole little shape in here, but it's good to know that it's there, and it's good to look for it, that there's this little dark spot that happens in between here. And of course, if you're painting someone older, there's going to be wrinkles or little lines or things in there. But for the most part, the most important thing is that divot, that down plane, that where it kind of comes down and back off of the forehead, and then the bridge of the nose starts and comes forward towards you. So hopefully that helps, that answered that.
Okay, I think we have other questions here. Now, this one is lips versus eyes. I have been told that the outside edge where the bottom of the lip join is never further out than the pupil of the eye.
It can be. I absolutely, it can be. So especially if someone's smiling really big and someone just has a much larger mouth and more close set eyes, it will definitely break that rule. Absolutely. So you just have to look carefully. For the most part, most people will fall into that general rule, but you always have to kind of look for, is the person that I'm going after, is the person that I'm trying to recreate, are they a little different than the norm?
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Yeah. We have a question about the ear. I thought you said something about the ear. Yeah. I think the general rule, which a lot of people talk about, is the ears sit between the bottom of the nose and the eyebrow. But you can already see, like in my model here, and she's looking straight at me, her ear is above the root of the nose. So it's already up. So that rule is nice to know about, but it doesn't always apply. And there are, for some reason, like if you think of The Rock, the actor The Rock, who's bald, there's a lot of bald men for some reason. They will have their eyes and most of their features lifted up higher in their face, and the ears as well, than the standard, the eyebrow or the ears kind of line up with the eyebrow and the bottom of the nose. They tend to be lifted up higher. I don't know why, but it's just something that happens and you have to look for it.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Okay, let's see if there's other questions in here. If you guys have questions, go ahead and drop them in. Got people from all over the world watching today, so that's fun. You're drawing them in.
Good, yeah.
I know one question I have is that I always have a little trouble with the shadows on the forehead because there's some very subtle little changes in the forehead. Is there any particular way to measure those?
Yeah, absolutely. We can talk about this area right in here. So there's a brow bone that's right in through here that kind of runs along the bottom of the forehead. If you kind of think of the forehead as almost coming forward slightly towards you, what happens is this little area right in through here above the eyebrows will tend to catch the light a little bit more. So it'll tend to be subtly lighter. Again, it depends on your lighting source. And then right in here will get a little darker. And then right here through the top, what's happening is this is turning away. And so if you have trouble with the forehead, basically just take your hand and put it on your own forehead. And you can feel, like if you put your hand on your forehead and then pull it away slowly without moving it, you'll see that this whole thing is really round like a grapefruit. And so it's much more round than you think. And I see a lot of portraits a lot of the time where the forehead is just kind of painted with a flat kind of flesh tone color. And what it does is it flattens out this whole area. You really want to look for that nuance of where it starts getting darker toward the top, and then right here up against the eyebrows where that brow bone is kicking out a little bit more and catching the light a little bit more. And that should help. If you can get this a little bit lighter, obviously we'll look for highlights and anything else that's happening in there, with specific lighting. But if you can get it feeling as though it's round, it's rounding off on the sides and it's rounding as it goes back into the hairline, that will definitely help a lot as well.
Okay. What about ears in relationship to the nose?
Yeah, again, you know, they say sometimes when you're looking straight forward that the ear lobe will line up kind of with the bottom of the nose, but you can see right here, she's a little higher. And again, if her head was turned one way or another, that relationship will change. So those rules, those academic rules are kind of good to know and keep them in your back pocket. But when you're actually dealing with real people and really trying to go after, you know, a likeness in a portrait, some of those things kind of have to fall away because we're all different. And it's just a really beautiful thing. There's one more thing here I was going to bring up here. There's underneath the eyebrow, right in through here, there's a little area right in here. I call it the sausage shape because this is really a very round and full area before it comes down into that crease and into the eye part of it itself. So right in through here, typically it'll be darker on the bottom and catch more light right here up against the eyebrow. So you want to watch that little shape too and make sure that it feels round and full, because that's what's happening in space. It's turning underneath, and you want to still be able to feel that this is not just flat. It's not just an eyebrow and an eye just stuck on a, I talk about a dinner plate portrait where if I'm just serving up features and I'm not thinking about all this structure, I'm just doing eyes, nose, and mouth on a flesh tone colored oval shape. Basically, I'm just kind of serving you up a dinner plate portrait. It's all the features on a flat surface, on a flat dinner plate. And so this is the kind of stuff that'll stop that from happening. When you really look for the form here, you look for the subtle little light that's catching right in here, you look for this little divot right in through here that gets a little bit darker, and all that little subtle stuff will really go a long way to structurally making your portrait look much more three-dimensional. She's starting to look all little clowny here. Did you have any more questions? Oh, are you there, Eric? I'm assuming you can still hear me. I think we might have lost Eric. I'm not sure if you're hearing me or not. I can keep talking about some other features here. The bottom lip especially does.
Yeah, hey Christine, sorry, we just had a little bit of a technical error. Eric is just having a little trouble with his Wi-Fi. He should be back in just a second. So go ahead and continue teaching. Hopefully he's gonna pop up any minute now.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So we had talked about the little sausage shape that happens up here above the eye. It's really good to kind of watch for that too on the bottom lip. This bottom lip can be so full and it's so round, the way it kind of kicks out from the seam where those lips come together. You have to think of it as like two little pillows coming together, and it's really round the way it comes out and down and around on that bottom lip. So anything again you can do to kind of render it not flat and not all the same color, but get it to kind of vary, you know, give it a little bit more shading, maybe make sure you see the darkness that's up against the crease and kind of get it to roll out. That'll also help with the structure of that a lot. Another thing is this kind of line where, you know, we think where the chin kind of just rolls back. There's a lot of subtle little variations that can happen here on the whole bottom of the jaw. So again, I talked before about sometimes this is a little more triangular, sometimes it's a little more rectangular. You'll see this almost specific line that'll come back off the chin. And then depending on the musculature and the bones in the cheeks, sometimes you'll get this really fat area, this kind of plump right in through here. Sometimes it's very angular and it goes straight across. If you're dealing with a lot of toddlers, again, you'll get this kind of almost really fat, wonderful little chubby shape that happens in through here and through the cheek. So again, kind of watch that, but watch the edge of things, like how this is straight and maybe it curves and then it dips back in again where this kind of cheek is, and then where the fatness right in through here, this pocket on the cheek will give you this beautiful little curve here on the outside. So slow down and really look for like what is happening with these little angles. Are they compound curves? Are they kind of turning and moving just gently between going right and left? And that'll also help a lot. The other thing is coming back to the nose, there's, you know, the little flanges that are either side right in through here. The nostrils themselves, I mean, we kind of think of them as just almost just like these little caves or these little holes in there. It's really distinctive from one person to another nostrils as well. Sometimes people have them very curved like this. Sometimes they're very straight across. Some people are actually, you know, very linear where you barely kind of see them and they're just straight. They're barely kicking kicking up off of a straight line. So really watch the shape of the nostrils. That will help a lot too. And a tip that I always talk to my students about is try and keep them a lot lighter and redder and fresher than you think that they really need to be, because there's nothing that kills a portrait more faster than if you make the nostrils just black. And so all of a sudden it just feels like these holes in the face and it doesn't feel very human. So what you want to do is really keep them lighter, a little fresher, paint them a little more on the red side, or add some lavender in there a little bit, and just keep them from being this black two little holes right on the side of the face, because that will really not help you at all. So I'm going to just keep talking here until Eric comes back. The other thing that we need to kind of maybe address is the way the eyelids kind of sit around the eyeball. So if I'm looking at the eyeball, say from the side, and say this is the eyeball, the eyelids actually come out from the side of the eye, and then the lashes happen here. So they actually, the lashes are coming up off of the edge of that, not right on the eyelid. So right here, so say this is my eye, and then light is coming down. When you have this little rim right here of the bottom lid, there's a very light area that will happen right through here, right up against the eye. And so I kind of don't have it really specific in through here, but you can kind of see this little rim that happens underneath the pupil. And what that does is it'll catch the light, and it'll actually be really light, and sometimes even lighter than the flesh tone, because it's catching the light right in through there, right up against the pupil. And so you have to kind of be very mindful that, it's not just the skin doesn't just come right up against the eyeball and it stops. There's a little rim right there where the lids are kind of encircling the eye, closing down around the eye, and that becomes a really important area right in through here. And speaking of which, there's another thing with the eye, and hopefully you can see me on the camera right in through here. I'll come down here. When you're dealing with the eye as well, and again, we talked about these two little compound curves that kind of come together. If I have the little rim that's happening right in through here, right against the rim, you get something in here that's called the waterline. And so if the pupil's in through here, let's say, and we know there's always typically there's a nice highlight that happens in the eyes if you've got decent lighting. In this case, we've got the highlights kind of on the bottom toward her pupil because the lighting is coming up. But right here, right up against that lid, or that bottom lid, you'll get this almost little tiny secondary highlight that pretty much happens underneath this highlight. Not always, it again depends on the lighting, but you'll get this little tiny thin white reflected that's happening right here up against the bottom lid. And what that is because the eyes are wet, there's almost like this pool of the liquid from the eye that sits right here against this lid. And so what happens is it will catch the light, this little tiny rim right here, and it'll be very light, but it'll be very thin. So if you're doing a portrait and you're doing it especially really large, like this size, you want to kind of also make sure that you include this little bitty reflected light that sits right against this bottom lid, and it's called the waterline. And it's actually really important. We're used to seeing it when we talk to each other and everything, but sometimes in photographs it doesn't capture that very well. So when you look at each other, or you're looking at your someone in the movie or whatever, take a good look and look for the waterline, because that's actually a very distinctive and a very important part of the eye when you're painting the eyes. So that will help a lot, is finding that. And then let's see, as long as we're talking about the eyes, of course, a lot of people think the whites of the eyes are white. It's kind of deceiving, because very rarely are they white. Because if you look at my photo reference, especially, you'll see that really bright white highlight that's in her eye. But the white parts of the eyes around it are not that white at all. So especially since she's a little bit more in the shadow, and her left eye over here is more in the shadow. So this little highlight is actually the brightest
All right, so as you guys can see, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties today. It looks like Christine might have some internet connection, and we're still waiting on Eric to come back. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the events that we have going on. Well, first of all, just so you guys know, we do have a free ebook if you're interested in downloading it. 45 pastel pointers from the pros. So make sure that you go check out pasteltoday.com/ebook. We also have some wonderful videos online. If you haven't been yet already, go check out painttube.tv to see some wonderful videos from some of our featured artists. As for the events that we have coming up, in September, we have Pastel Live. We have a really wonderful faculty coming up, so make sure that you check that out, sign up. We have Realism Live coming up this November. We'll have a lot of wonderful portrait artists there, so if you want to continue this work, make sure you sign up at realismlive.com. We have Watercolor Live coming up this January. And first up, we have Acrylic Live as well. So make sure you events. And it looks like Eric's back.
Well, I'm on my phone, guys, and I apologize. My internet went out. I'm up in upstate New York, and my internet went out, and so I had to get away from my studio area to get a signal. And I don't know what's going on, but Christy, thank you for filling in, and I just want to say thank you to our guest. What a fabulous! I love the points of the face. I think that's going to help a lot. Now, if you're looking at my face exaggerated from my iPhone camera, then the points of the face, you can see here, here's a big giant nose. Anyway, you guys, thanks for tuning in today. I'm sorry about the mess up, but this has been Art School Live. We're here every weekday at 12 noon, and we'll see you tomorrow.